Mira Business FM, Dubai's home of business radio.
It's the morning drive. This is Mira Business FM, and brands across the Middle East are being warned over unlicensed music use in either advertisements or social media campaigns. Lots of local artists as well are missing out on royalties altogether. Lots to talk about, so it needs to be unpacked. And we have the man to do that. Pierre Carne, Managing Director at Massive Music. Mina is in the studio with me. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Good morning.
Thank you for flying in from South Africa. I know you're flying out tonight.
Yes.
I said to you, Pierre, do you need to sleep? You know, I'm fine. And you just Mr. Airlines at the moment.
Always ready to talk about music, so it's all good.
Do you know what? There is a huge misconception. Lots of things to kind of clear up this morning. I'd like to do this with you. A misconception amongst, I guess, marketing teams that if a song is in a social media app's library, it's free for a business to use. So I want to clear the air. What's the actual difference between personal use and commercial licensing, and how are UAE brands getting caught out?
Yeah, sure. It's quite a topic to unpack. I think you've summarized it quite clearly in just a couple of words already there.
I tried.
Which is when you're using music in online content, generally, if you're just a regular person using it for your social media stories or background of a post, generally, as long as you're using music that's been pre-cleared as part of that platform's library, you're fine to do so, because that's the purpose of having that pre-clearance, is for personal use. However, as soon as you're either a corporate brand or even an individual influencer who's selling a product, and by doing so, you're technically a business, right? If you're an influencer that's selling your services online, then things fall into a different category, which is that now you're using this music for commercial purposes, right? You're selling a product or a service behind it, and therefore you're leveraging that music, leveraging the intellectual property of that composition for profit, for gain, right?
Right.
Then it falls into an advertising space, into a commercial use space, and that actually means that you need to go and clear the rights of that piece of music. You need to go license that piece of music from the people who own the rights to it, essentially paying them some money to get their permission to use the music to advertise your service or your product. And if you don't do that, then they will have grounds to either ask you to, at the very least, take down the content, if not actually take you to court for use of intellectual property without permission.
Okay. So we're seeing lots of regional campaigns being silenced or flagged by AI-driven copyright bots. And that's a real thing now. Sure. Beyond just losing a video, what kinds of financial, I don't know, reputational penalties are there if that a brand might face if, say, a major label decided to pursue an infringement claim? Yeah,
absolutely. So the thing is, I think this to answer this, we need to sort of have a bit of an understanding of the value of music and of intellectual property, which I think is something that's really quite misunderstood as a whole by the general population, wherever you go, where people assume that if something exists, whether it's a piece of music or a picture or a clip from a video, and you can find it online, you can probably use it and reuse it yourself as you like. But generally, someone owns the rights to that original piece of content, whatever it may be, and that person has the exclusive and discretionary ability to decide where and by whom it's going to be used. When we look at music, typically, very famous songs, the ones that everyone would recognize, we've seen them often in movies, we've seen them often in ads. Everyone wants to use those songs, right? Because a great way to connect with your audience or to make people pay attention to you is to leverage things that they're already familiar with. As a result, the people who own the rights to very, very famous global hit songs generally will be very careful with who they give the permission to use that piece of music, to not water down the value of that piece of music, and they will charge quite a bit of money for you to be able to use that music commercially. So if you're a brand and you want to use a global hit song in an ad, it might cost you somewhere in the 400,000 dirhams and above to use it even in a social media campaign. However, if you don't go and make that deal and clear the rights to that music, you will most likely, as soon as it's been, propagated and maybe appeared on television or in cinemas, you might get a lawsuit that is worth double, triple, 4 times that. We've seen lawsuits that go into the multi-million US dollars with some global brands that have been infringing on music. So at the end of the day, is the risk really worth it compared to what might catch up with you in the future? I'm not too sure. Plus, if you're releasing content with unlicensed music that you've also paid to produce, to film, to get actors into, to have a nice director manage for you, that's all thrown out of the window because now you can't use that film with that piece of music you didn't pay for.
It's a minefield, isn't it? Okay, so lots of brands turn to stock music to avoid the issues, right? Which I suppose is a safe choice, but does that kind of dilute a brand entity? Because markets demand, they want premium quality, we want authenticity, we want to relate to the music, and if it's a bit safe, is that boring?
I think there is the boring aspect, for sure. So when it comes to royalty-free music and library music, the tracks that you can buy online for smaller budgets to use it in advertising and film, of course, it's an important resource, and it's important that it's there for independent creators, for maybe an occasional scene in a movie, or for small social media ad content, perhaps. But when this is something that you're using as a go-to and repetitively, yes, you become a bit boring because you're using music that's really been designed for a wide appeal instead of being unique and crafted to you. Yeah. You might be losing a bit of a premium edge because you're not using necessarily music that is very well crafted as a whole, again, because it has to be simple and easily understandable. But then there's other issues that come into play. So, for example, we've seen situations where we have competing brands, happens a lot with banks typically, that are running ads at the same time that have the exact same piece of corporate piano stock music running in the background.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times.
And so it can actually start damaging your brand and making you look cheap and confusing people a little bit. A lot of people do, even if it is subconsciously, attach quite a bit of importance to the sound and music that they hear in communications, and it informs their purchasing decisions and their brand preference. By just recurringly using stock music, you're not only not scoring any points to that board, but often maybe even losing some.
It's interesting this because, clearly, and I can see in your eyes how important music is to you. I'm a music fan. It's important to me. I'm just a music collector. I just buy music and I like it. But I think there's a weird kind of dissonance here in that music is really important for a brand campaign. But there doesn't seem to be this great love for the importance, or it's just a song in the background, don't worry about that. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. This is a big part of my work and our work at Massive Music, which is to explain to brands and to creators the importance of the music that they use on multiple levels, right? Because yes, there is the let's say kind of the first level on which it's appreciated, which is aesthetically, is this pleasing? Does this fit the brand? If it's a famous song, do I know this song? Do I like it? Is it helping me to appreciate this campaign or the brand as a whole a little bit more? But then there's also kind of a secondary level, which is a little bit more on the subconscious side, where brands that use music in a smart way are actually doing a bit of memory encoding with their audience. They've got recognizable melodies or styles that people start to associate with them after a while. We can even design music to a point where it informs on purchasing decisions a little bit by adapting music to your culture or the time of the year or specific product lines or services that a brand is selling to sort of direct people emotionally to the places that we want to with music, because at the end of the day, it is a powerful art form which is fundamentally emotional, and so when it's used smartly, music goes beyond being just background music, but can actually be something that really drives what a brand is trying to achieve.
I think very often you kind of, with lots of campaigns, if music is used really clever, you kind of don't notice it's there, but you would really notice it if it wasn't. That's one of those kind of subliminal effects, maybe. How do music rights in the Middle East differ from Europe or the US or other markets? Is it more difficult for a brand to clear rights for a global hit here compared to other markets? Because there are cross-jurisdictional issues here as well, aren't there?
Yep, absolutely. So when it comes to this specific case of we want to license the song to a global hit artist, generally this is about the same process anywhere that you are in the world. So it's not really specific to our region. At the end of the day, the process is always the same, which is you need to get in touch with the rights holders, the people who own the rights to that song. If it's a big global hit song, there might be a dozen people who own parts of those rights, because there might be 2 or 3 people who were involved in writing the lyrics, 2 composers who composed and arranged the music. Of course, the artist who performed it, maybe it's a band, so maybe there's 5 of them there. And you also have this one person who came into the studio and recorded a 3-second saxophone line that's in the track and now has his little percentage as well. So you need to get in touch with all of those people, negotiate with all of them, agree on conditions of use, agree on a price, and then move to contracting it. So it's quite an extensive process, but when it comes to big hit songs, generally this is very well established because there are global systems in place by the labels and publishers that represent the songs to facilitate this for anyone. Where it becomes trickier and different for us in the region is when we look at local music and sort of the regional scene, where definitely the infrastructure when it comes to managing and controlling music rights in this region, I would say, is very much still developing compared to where it's at in some Western countries, typically, where this is, they've been established infrastructures for decades, since the early 20th century at this point. Here, this is across the GCC and wider region. These societies and sort of back-end infrastructure is still very much being built up. And so what this means is that sometimes we'll get asked at Massive Music to go and clear a song from an iconic Egyptian artist from the 1960s, and it's just impossible to find who owns the rights to this music because they were never really written down properly and registered anywhere in a clearly legible way. It's never happened to us because we do our best to double check our sources, but I know of some brands and production companies in the region who've had the experience of licensing music from a regional artist through a third party, where the third party explained that they were the full representatives of this piece of music, to then pay $50,000 and find out that actually this person has absolutely nothing to do with the rights, but there's just no way to really check it and confirm this information. So I would say when it comes to local music, sometimes things are still a little bit opaque because all of these databases and sort of infrastructures are still very much being built up right now as we speak.
Okay, but still, artists in the region, lots are still not even registering their music, are they? So let's rewind even further. How do you even go about registering and then monetizing your creation? So
generally this happens with entities that are called PROs, performance rights organizations, or CMOs alternatively, which is relatively similar collective management organizations, which generally there's 1 to 3 in a country that exist, and their role is really to oversee the back end of the music and the music rights ecosystem within their chosen territory. So typically in France, where I'm from, it is called the SACEM, In America, there's ASCAP and BMI. For people who are not familiar with this is all going to be a little bit distant, but at least those are the terms. And basically, what these entities do is that they collect money from companies or other entities that use music. So typically, TV stations, radio stations, venues like restaurants, bars, nightclubs. Sometimes they're also supported by the government financially to a certain extent. And then they use those funds to build a database of music where artists can submit their tracks and say, this is mine, I'm going to put my name on it and protect that piece of music as their creation. But then the societies also distribute money to all of these artists based on where their music is being used. And this is what's meant by royalties, right? Your music gets played on TV, in an ad, or in a segment of a TV show. There's a little bit of money that will be paid to you for the fact that that piece of music was aired in public. Now, when it comes to the GCC, currently we have very few of these music rights societies that exist in the region, which means that artists don't really have a place to go if they want to register and protect their music locally. So there are a lot of artists who do it abroad. They'll go and register in the Netherlands, in the UK, in France, in Canada even, I've heard, and then try to sort of work through everything abroad. But locally, until very recently, these organizations have just not existed at all, which means that unless you actually go out, do the research, and try to protect your music internationally through maybe a foreign organization, locally there wasn't not only the infrastructure, but also not necessarily the education available to understand how and why to go about this.
But that's changing, I guess.
Correct.
It wasn't the case, but is there now a PRO, a performing rights organization?
So we now have, from a couple of years ago where we had none, in the UAE we now have 3.
Okay.
So
we play catch up pretty good here.
It's the UAE way. Why go small when you can go big? But all of these 3 kind of semi-competing entities were all launched in the last 1 to 2 years and are still very much in the process of being built up. So it's going to take a bit of time still to connect everything, connect all the artists. Like you mentioned earlier, this kind of organization has to be also connected to all of the others around the world. So they have to arrange reciprocal deals with 50 to 100 different organizations around the world to make sure that if a UAE musician's track is used in a TV show in Spain, that this will be recognized and communicated. So there's all of these processes that are still being set up. So we're moving in the right direction. I would definitely encourage musicians to look into what the landscape is at the moment when it comes to rights management organizations in this region. But realistically, it seems it's still going to take some time until it's really functional to the point that it is in some other countries.
Okay, so early steps have been made in that case. Just a reminder, this is Mira Business FM from Dubai. I wanted to ask you, Pierre, about brands and how brands employ music in their communication. Do you think brands are a little bit casual about that? If you're using music on TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, popular platforms, are they a bit kind of blasé about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, unfortunately, and this is one of the bigger challenges of my work. My work being to create or license music for content and advertising primarily, is that music is often kind of left to be the last item on the shopping list in a way. I wouldn't go as far as to say an afterthought, but not too far from there, where we'll have brands and agencies that invest in creating these huge advertising campaigns, big ideas. They'll bring in a celebrity, put a bunch of budget on shooting a fantastic film with a big director. But then they start thinking about what's the music on this film going to be kind of at the very end. And that is also reflected in sort of the timelines and the budgets that are made available for music, which doesn't help either when you're trying to really create something valuable. And the result is that you do sometimes see, these great campaigns, like visually striking. Maybe there's a celebrity in there that's doing something that's remarkable for the context. But musically, it's just kind of generic background music or a famous song that's been sort of bought and put on there, but doesn't really connect with the story. Whereas, when we do work with brands and agencies who think about music from the get-go and really try to look at it as not only a creative storytelling tool, but also as a strategic tool. How's this going to help us achieve our goals and communicate the right things with this campaign? Often we can actually do things which are a lot more creatively interesting and artistic, but often also a lot more cost effective and time effective, because you're coming with something that's thought out rather than trying to fill a gap with music when it's already a little bit too late.
You're not trying to shoehorn something in
Exactly.
place. Okay. Are you seeing a shift from brands towards local music? How much has that happened?
I would say increasingly so.
Yeah.
It depends on where you are, I would say. I think here in Dubai and in the UAE, we've always had a lot of requests for very international music, which is kind of to be expected, given that the audience here
It's a
is
huge,
very international,
wide demographic, yeah.
right? Such
Yeah.
a wide demographic.
Yeah.
So generally, what you're trying to do with music is appeal to as many people as possible, whether they be from the GCC, South Asian, European, Latin American. How do we find things that kind of brings everyone together and is going to speak to the largest number of people that it can? When we go to some other territories, so typically in Saudi Arabia, for example, generally the musical decisions are much more focused on local culture, given that your audience is much more local as well, and connected to that heritage that's been there for a long time. So historically, it's kind of depended on which country we're in the region. But I would say that generally, regardless of specific territory, in the last couple of years, we have seen more focus on wanting to work with local artists and helping to develop local talent, which I think is in part connected to, first of all, local talent developing and becoming better. We have more fantastic pop stars, DJs, electronic music producers, even rappers coming from this region than we ever did before. And a lot of them are starting to succeed internationally a bit more, which makes it more appealing for brands. But also I think there's an element of pride and representation there as well, where increasingly, I mean, they have always done this, but perhaps even a little bit more lately, local brands want to play a part in promoting the culture that is happening locally as well, and to show that they're involved with local talent and not just trying to source the biggest and the best from abroad to bring here.
It's hard to do, though, isn't it? Because, I mean, traditionally, let's be honest, it's been a little bit cliched. The kind of the idea of the sound of the Middle East, very often a little bit cheesy, let's be honest, but in advertising terms. But to turn the sound of the Middle East into a corporate identity, that's very hard, because you have to make a brand sound local, but competitive on a much grander scale.
Sure.
Globally, I guess.
Yeah, it is a request that we get a lot when we're composing music, and specifically when we're trying to when we're working on audio branding, sonic branding projects, where we're really creating a bespoke piece of music and an audio signature or a logo and sound that's going to represent the brand not only on one campaign, but over a long period of time and in many different places. So we're really trying to figure out, how do we embody this brand as clearly as possible in sound and music? How do we translate what this brand is into music? And when we're doing this kind of exercise, a request that we do get a lot is roughly what you've been describing, which is, we are a brand that has global ambitions. We want to have a global impact, reach people all around the world with what we do, but we have strong local roots in our emirate or country, depending on how it's defined. And so how do we do this where we create a sound that represents us as a brand that's modern and wants to be global and international, but also still has that heritage? And often this means trying to explore kind of a balance of infusing some very globalized music genres with some really detailed, authentic, local elements. What are some specific sounds, specific melodic scales, specific instruments, but that are played in a specific way as well, that we can use that really brings that authentic heritage into the music whilst keeping it global and accessible, where someone in Mexico can hear it and still find it catchy and appealing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm thinking of a few examples. I think of real branding success. Emirates comes to mind.
Sure.
You look at what Abu Dhabi's done with Manchester City. There's a real feeling that that's Abu Dhabi owned, but it is very Manchester. Locally, for example, stands out to me. Those kinds of things. I wanted to talk to you more about sonic branding, actually, but we are so over time.
Sure.
You're going to have to come back, Pierre. One thing I wanted to ask you just very quickly. AI can now generate music.
Yes.
This is probably going to be a bugbear of yours. I have a feeling, but I don't know. How do you see the intellectual property landscape shifting? Because if brands start owning, if that's even the right term, their own AI-generated music libraries, they bypass licensing altogether. Is that a process that's happening? Are you seeing that?
More or less. So
Right.
This is a difficult one to keep short, but I will do my best. The problem remains the same at the end of the day, but just with an intermediary. When you're using an AI algorithm to create music, that model has been trained on other pieces of music before it's creating that music for you, right? Okay. What are those pieces of music it's been trained on? And have the rights to those pieces of music been cleared before it was trained? Because if not, you could argue that basically what the AI is doing kind of, let's say, a very advanced remix of a bunch of music that it's heard, but that's protected and that belongs to other people.
Right.
So today there's kind of a division between music AI companies that are creating music with a curated catalog where they're cleared all the rights for it, and then brands or individuals can use that service to create music where they own the rights of the music entirely, and others who are just training on everything and will kind of figure out the rights later. Those tend to be the ones that are outputting better quality music because as a result they have a larger pool to work with.
Yeah.
But those outputs right now cannot be legally licensed to be used by brands in advertising or for film and television because they're technically void in terms of intellectual property for the time being.
Okay, right. It's a watch this space thing, isn't it? I've got you. Pierre Canet is Managing Director at Massive Music MENA. They are I think this is right, global sonic branding agency and a music partner.
All correct.
That works. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Safe journey as well. Remember, we stream 24/7 on YouTube, on TuneIn and Streamer and more. This is Mira Business FM.
Mira Business FM. The sound of success. Mira Business FM.
It's real estate now on Mira Business FM. This is the morning drive with me, Tim Elliott, and AJ Menon is here, CEO of Lux Vista Real Estate here in Dubai. Nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you, Tim.
Why do people invest in Dubai real estate? That's the question today. I have no other questions. 20 minutes from now, go. No, that's the headline today. But actually, it's a really good question because there are obviously so many motivations for buying real estate. You want to live there, you want to rent it, you want to start an Airbnb business, whatever it is. But why do, that's the emphasis, people invest in real estate in Dubai?
Just because they've got a lot of money and they just want to throw it at something and then lose all the money.
just to see what sticks. It's like spaghetti when you're right, okay. No. There's got to be more to it than that, AJ Menon.
Idea is definitely when you're investing in something, what do you need? You need returns, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, when anybody is investing in Dubai real estate, they are looking for capital appreciation.
Yeah.
Whether they're buying a 350 square feet studio or they're buying a 20,000 square feet mansion. That is the general idea.
Sure.
Right. So that is the reason why people invest in real estate.
Okay. So people want capital appreciation. It could be a studio all the way to a mansion, as you say. Until it's time to buy, they want capital appreciation.
And then they talk about, can we get something below the market? Do you have any distress deals?
Okay.
So it really doesn't make any sense. See, these investors, they are willing to buy.
Yeah.
They will talk about investing happily in off-plan. They expect capital appreciation. They talk up to their friends about, the capital appreciation, Dubai's vision 2040, the population increase, the infrastructure development. But when it comes to them, they're really desperately hunting for distressed deals. They call up brokers like us and say, you know what, we want to buy something which is market price below 20%, OP below 10%, especially during crisis like this.
I detect a little bit of you're a bit fed up with this.
Really, it's a bit of sarcasm that is coming up.
Yeah, I'm sort of detecting that. So this is not all investors, but lots of kind of average Dubai property investors are living in a state of, well, that's almost like it's a contradiction.
Yeah, it's very contradictory because it's not that there are distressed deals. Don't get me wrong. Yes, there is a lot of distressed deals.
Okay,
but not everything and not everybody is distressed. So, and there is a lot of people who's willing to buy distressed deal than there are people to sell distressed deals.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we need to take a moment here. I mean, we just have to, they have to think a little bit. They want appreciation on their own properties that they have invested, but they expect to buy a distressed deal from somebody else. So, how does a distressed deal happen? A distressed deal happens when one investor loses the money. And for that, there are a few reasons. The main reason is greed and a combination of greed and ignorance.
That's true.
Greed can come from developers. I will get to that part later.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that.
And then your own greed. And what do I mean by that is basically many investors, they have money to buy one property. But then, what they do is like they say, okay, maybe if I stretch a little bit more, because I've got this beautiful payment plan from the developer, let me buy 2 instead of 1 or even more. And you know what, I will sell it at a handover, I'll make some profits, and then that will reduce my payments to the first unit. I will keep 1 unit.
Okay.
So that is the general thought process. But again, that is a speculation and hope. Hope is not a strategy.
Is that a general kind of Dubai UAE thing? Because I don't know. I'm just going to go and buy a property that I'm not a property investor, obviously. I'm going to buy somewhere I want to live in.
You'll stay poor, Tim.
I will, yeah. Poor but happy, probably. No, you are right. I mean, that's something you see that every day. You see people doing that.
See,
that's almost promoted.
It started right from day one, because back in the days there were no real RERA regulations. Anybody, there was no down payment. It was just, whatever you buy, and then there's no regulations at all. So I could buy 5 properties. They would not check if I'm able to buy 5 properties or not.
Okay.
If I just put the down payment of some booking amount, they'll give it to me. And then like back in the days, the demand was so much that you stand in the queue, you get your unit, and you go back to the queue. Somebody's there to take it from you at 50,000 plus.
Sure.
So again, and so somehow that kind of got ingrained into pretty much all the old timers here. Whoever started investing in real estate, who made money in real estate, these are the people who again invest in real estate.
But these are the wheeler dealers. Everybody likes a deal.
Yeah.
You can understand why, particularly now. I mean, we've been talking about distressed deals on it pretty much every real estate segment on this program, and there are a few. Everybody wants a deal. Everybody's happy when they get the bargain, and what happens on the other side, the person that's lost the money, there's just not a second thought for most people, is there?
And the other part is the combination of greed and ignorance is basically, it is not coming from the customer. It's actually the brokers, the unethical brokers who are doing this.
So it's a sales tactic.
It's a sales tactic. So again, instead of them deciding for themselves that let me buy 2, these brokers will say, okay, instead of buying 1, why don't you buy 2? Why don't you buy 3? So I can get you some discounts because you're buying in bulk. And what I will do is within 3 to 4 months, I will just flip it. They just keep promising the earth and the moon. They say, okay, I can flip it within 3 to 4 months. Used to happen for some units back in the days. Not anymore. It is not happening. But by the time they realize it, it's too late. And then obviously when they're scrambling for funds, they understand at certain stage that they cannot keep up. So they will have to sell 1 or 2 at distress. So this is how a distress deal happens. But again, to have a distress deal, one investor win, one investor will have to lose money.
Okay. So that's the I've got a few questions for you. So that's how a distressed deal works. It's how it happens. Lots of speculators buy 1, 2, 3, multiple properties, hoping to resell at handover to fund just the one unit. And you can see the strategy there. Whether you agree with it or not is a different thing. When market or financial positions change, that hope strategy, that's a failure.
That's a failure.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, what you should understand is 2 to 3 years down the line, and anything can happen. The markets can change. Your own financial position can change. Maybe you don't work here anymore. Maybe you lost that job, obviously, or maybe you started a new business that will need a lot of funds. So will you focus on developing your own new business, or are you going to be supporting whatever payment plan you are in?
Yeah. How much of a stretch? How much risk can you take? Okay. You've been very vocal. You're often vocal about rogue brokers, understandably. People who promise unsuspecting buyers they can flip the unit in 3-4 months, it'll be fine, you'll be able to fund this and it'll be great, but almost like a free house. Of course, it never is. It very rarely happens. How much of the distress, AJ, in the market that you're seeing is being actively manufactured by advice like that, poor advice?
Actually,
like
if you look at it, probably 70% of the deals, the so-called distress deals, are manufactured ones. These were distress even before the war.
Okay.
And when some units happen, when some units are launched, within 5 minutes, a good broker, a good consultant can know that if this project is going to work or not. Yeah. Somebody with real experience, somebody who looks at it from an investor's lens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like, if I sell this to somebody, I get my commission. That is not they're just brokers. You should be looking to work with advisors. Big difference between a broker and an advisor.
You just got to find a good advisor.
Definitely.
Wonder who I can turn to. So why are buyers frustrated by high prices? Because if you're an investor and you're going to lock capital up for 3 or 4 years.
Correct.
Right? Or for a lengthy period, you're taking the risk and you're entitled to a reward if you do that.
Definitely. See, if I am an investor, I've locked in my capital. I've waited, 2 to 3 years. I've, seen the market cycles. I've waited through construction delays, whatever that execution risk that comes along with it. am I not eligible for a little reward at the end of the day? Because I'm not doing it for the good of my heart. When I'm investing in something, I expect some profits at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the thing is, most of the buyers nowadays, they think that they're entitled to get the best deal. I mean, yes, everybody likes a good deal, but it shouldn't come from the expense of somebody else. If they're really frustrated and if they really believe that the prices are really high at the moment, maybe they should look at the developers. Maybe the launch price of the developers was not good enough. It was already high. So instead of focusing the frustration on the sellers, they should be looking at what the developers are doing.
Okay, so you're clearly, there are some frustrations at the moment, aren't
Definitely.
there? From your side.
Everybody, even if you ask my wife, that she thinks that the market is overpriced. Some projects, not everything, but there are some amazing good projects right now in the market. But if you look at 60 to 70% are overpriced.
I mean, look, I don't look at the real estate market in any great detail, and really, when I do, it's talking to guys like you, and we talk regularly. I mean, weekly. The odd text here and there as well. But my perception of the market is that it is overpriced. That's how I would see it. If somebody said, "What do you think?" It seems expensive.
See, for an overseas investor, it wouldn't look expensive because this market is still way better than all the global markets. If you look at prices in London, if you look at prices in Singapore, compared to that, Dubai is way, way low. But if you look at a person who's been in Dubai for the last 15, 20 years, he or she would really understand that the prices have moved up considerably.
That would be my thinking, yeah. No, that makes sense. I've got a number of questions for you that I want to ask you, and you've pointed to the developers just now. So let me be blunt. Who are the real villains in all of this, AJ Millen?
If there are 10 developers, 8 of them are villains.
Is it
Okay,
really?
I'll make it 7. I'll just give them a grace.
Yeah, okay.
It's basically many of them, not all of them, but many of the developers are to be blamed.
Okay.
Because they understand the demand more than everybody else. So because they're going to be putting in the most money, I mean, the risk is on them, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, they've done all their due diligence. They've done all the calculations. They've done the feasibility studies. So they know what the land cost is. They know what the construction cost is. They can actually play around with the construction cost. You put more material, you put more amenities. Obviously, the construction cost is going to go up, but they can really adjust that a little bit.
Okay.
Of course, some tier 3 developers can even compromise on the quality. So we don't want to go to in that direction, but they can pretty much control what they want to spend to make a good product or a great product.
Okay.
And there is another thing, additional cost like marketing. The whole to sell kind of till they sell the unit. There is some cost associated with that. Plus, I understand the developers should make a healthy profit. So accept it. But what most of the developers from 2023 onwards they've done is they've locked in the future prices at the time of launch, which means they leave no room for appreciation for the investor.
Okay.
That is wrong because they should understand that these investors need a little bit of room for capital appreciation. The end buyer should have affordability, and the market should have liquidity. These three are a must for a win-win strategy for all the stakeholders involved.
So essentially, you're saying most developers, and it was the majority, are overcharging.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Let me break it down for you. Previous example.
All right then. Yeah.
Okay.
There was one more point. I mean, my point would be to that. The market will bear prices to a certain level, and the market will always adjust in its own way.
Yes.
So why is that incumbent on the developers? Because the market will do what the market does, and there are so many different factors involved in that. So why is that so villainous, if you like?
Now, why would the market
I know
adjust?
villain is, we're doing this in a comedy way. That's not.
Yeah. Now, I understand. See again, what the market does, the market should do organically. it shouldn't be artificially created. So if
Okay.
there are 10 developers, if 8 of them are actually going to price it high, the market is going to adjust to that high. But that doesn't make it right.
Fair. Okay.
So, and that is the reason why I said, yeah, this is a bit wrong.
Okay. It's stretching the boundaries
stretching
of
the
what's
boundaries.
ethical, is what you're saying.
See, technically, if you look at it, most of the plots, average plots, are something around 350 to 400 dirhams per square foot. The construction cost is anything between 600 to 800 dirhams. So we are looking at somewhere around that 1,000 dirham is your normal cost. Take a little bit of marketing plus the profits they want. 1,250, 1,300 dirham per square foot is a decent price to launch. But the average price per square foot in the entire Dubai market, I'm not talking about the most expensive one, the most cheapest one. The average is around 1,750 dirham per square foot, which means it is 450 dirhams almost overpriced.
Okay, so what developers are baking in future prices, right, into launches today. What does that mean in real terms? What does that mean for liquidity and for end user affordability?
It becomes because the salaries are not rising accordingly, and some people are even losing the job. So how does it become affordable? Yes, the banks are able to give them the loans, the mortgages, but again, if you don't qualify for that salary, even if you have mortgage, people cannot buy it.
So you would argue that it's short-sighted.
It is very short-sighted.
Yeah.
If they keep doing this, what is going to happen is they will have to take extreme because the off-plan sales still contributes to 70 to 75% of the entire sales these days. That is the golden egg, right? So you don't want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. So if they are not careful now, if they don't take appropriate steps now, the entire off-plan sales could stop.
And we'll see a shift where everyone is just waiting for ready properties.
Yeah, because if there is no appreciation for the investors during this construction, why should an investor go for an off-plan investing? So they can just say, we will wait. We'll only pay 27% or 28% of whatever that we have to give it to the cash component, and then we'll take a mortgage and buy a ready unit.
Yeah.
And if at all, that is one. So what these people will have to do is either they will have to price the new launch at lower than ready units, which should be that should be the way. At some stage, it just went overboard because ready units now are cheaper than the newer ones. And you're counting in, you're locking in a couple of years or 2 to 3 years of time and money.
Yeah, okay. No, and I see. So, I mean, your message here is pretty blunt. If you can't price competitively and add value, don't enter the market and spoil it with substandard units.
Correct. And you make it very bad for the existing good developers and the good projects and the investors because nobody can make money.
So there are two... Crisis is the wrong word, but there are two issues there, aren't there? There is the pricing issue, but there's also potentially a quality issue as well. And that's a double negative for the market.
Yeah. So we don't want to do this.
But it's not a positive double negative. No. It's two negatives.
Two negatives.
That's how I should have put it.
Yeah.
Okay. So developers may need to take some measures, maybe extreme measures in some cases, if they don't take corrective action. What does a sustainable, fair value launch strategy look like for a Dubai developer, do you think? What would you like to see?
I would like to see, because yes, I understand the products that were built in 2020 during the COVID period, they were in a different frame of mind. The quality was not that great because everybody it was a question mark in their mind. What would happen to Dubai? What would happen to the world when the COVID happened? When would they recover? Will they recover? So the things that came in at that time was not that great. But going forward, so 2021 onwards, when we recovered from COVID, that is when the entire world started coming to Dubai. That is when the developers went into the hyperdrive mode.
Yeah.
And yes, these are the ones when they started making fantastic products. We're talking about great amenities. Even the government, they came up with the regulations that, there must be so much of open spaces required, so much of amenities needed. So anything that is launched from 2021, 22 onwards, they are of high standards. But 24, 25, the prices started going really high. So I would want them to look at the prices, current prices now, and launch with prices slightly lower than what the current price is.
Okay.
So that will give you an appreciation at the time of handover, because obviously the market also would have moved organically up. So by the time those units are getting handed over, the investor gets that appreciation.
So off-plan, ready properties. There's
Off-plan should be cheaper than ready property.
Yeah, that makes sense. One more question. We're over time. I'm running up way behind. I know, I can see from the corner of my eye I'm being glared at. For rational investors who want legitimate appreciation without relying on predatory deals, distressed deals, what should you be asking about a developer's launch pricing?
They should look at, yes, what are the comparable units nearby, if at all there is comparable, and what is the current pricing now? Because everybody asks certain questions. One question we could really answer, because obviously they will say, what will be the prices when it comes to handover? So when they ask this kind of questions, we look at history, because transaction history it's very transparent in Dubai, and you can actually extrapolate it and say this could be the going price at the time of handover.
Yeah.
But sometimes they ask, what is going to be my projected rent? Because it is very difficult to give an absolute number. The projected rent would always be around that 7 to 8% if you're looking for an entry-level product, or if you're going for an expensive product, you're looking at anything between 5.5 to 6.5, 7% max.
Okay. Man with a message. Man on a mission as well. AJ Menon, CEO of Lux Vista Real Estate. Always enjoyed talking to you, AJ. Thank you.
I hope the developers don't blacklist me.
Yes, you said it, not me. Wherever you're joining us from, don't forget to like, to follow, to subscribe for more interviews like this from Mira Business FM.
Mira Business FM, Dubai's home of business radio. Mira Business FM, Dubai's home of business radio.
This is the Morning Drive. It's Mira Business FM. Dubai is accelerating its push into agentic AI. The UAE is aiming to shift 50% of government services to autonomous AI within 2 years. Are businesses ready for AI that can think and can act and can make decisions and a whole lot more as well? And what do companies now have to do to fix, in effect, before AI exposes the cracks? A couple of things we hope to talk about this morning. Munir Hijazi is the CEO for the GCC at Teleperformance, or TP as it's known. Munir, good to have you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Tim. It's very nice to be here, and it's a pleasure.
It's good to have you with us. So I wanted to start with this, actually. Shifting half of all government services to autonomous AI in 24 months, 2 years, that's a pretty massive leap. Is the private sector inspired by a timeline like that, or are people, corporate leaders, are they panicking behind the scenes? What's going on?
Okay, I think there's less panic.
Right.
I think there's more inspiration to put it in short terms. But I think the reality is, what does that mean, right? If you want to move 50% of your services to AI, I think if we take that and unpack it, so is it 50% of the transactions that go today through the government services, let's say, through government portals? Is it that 50% of those transactions have to go through AI? Or is it that AI is going to be a helper to try and process some of the government services? Or is it just a chatbot that we're going to, put at the front of all the government services that can help people essentially understand how to make the most use of these government services? So what does that mean? I think there was a recent announcement by Dubai Chambers, which actually puts that in practical terms, or kind of, if you will, defines a blueprint or a roadmap.
This is their executive committee.
That's
right?
their executive committee,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And I think what that does, it achieves two things, okay? First, it offers the businesses the opportunity to better understand what that means, right? So it's a forum where business leaders or business representatives can sit with the government and really understand, what does that transition to 50% AI over or within the next couple of years, what does that mean? What does that entail? And also provide their feedback and their perspective, okay? Because it's a broad target, it's a very creative target, it's an achievable target. I think that's what's interesting about it. And what's even more interesting is that Dubai has done many similar creative, innovative, and achievable targets before, right? And the UAE in general, yeah? So it offers the businesses that opportunity to better understand and to provide their feedback. But it also offers them an avenue to flourish on the back of the momentum that this announcement has created. Because now you can sit and talk to... So one of the things that the announcement talks about is incubators, encouraging companies to start up AI initiatives, okay? So what are those? What sort of AI initiatives, if I were a business entrepreneur, for example, and I wanted to start something up, what sort of AI initiative should I do? I think the committee offers an avenue for businesses to discuss with the government what those initiatives are and to experiment with that. And to put that in layman terms, okay? So you can do things around data, for example. You can do stuff around data cleansing, data annotation. You can do stuff around analytics. You can do stuff around governance. You can do stuff around AI ethics. You can look at particular use cases that are meaningful for the businesses and the citizens and the residents in Dubai, and actually do those use cases. Yeah. So for instance, take Diwa. Okay. Diwa today, through the Diwa app, they send you an alert on your mobile if they suspect there's leakage. And the way they find that out is because of the smart meters and because they look at your consumption, and essentially they see that there's a spike in your consumption that is unjustifiable compared to the households in your neighborhood, right? So they say there's something. Imagine working with businesses to take that to the next level, okay? Imagine there's a partnership with a maintenance company. Imagine that this alert goes to the maintenance company that you have a contract with, and that AI in the background arranges for that maintenance company to come at a specific time that is convenient for you to look at that leak and to fix it for you. So you're sitting there at home. Not only do you alerts you that a leak has been detected or there's suspicion of a certain leak, but also provides the service in partnership with the private sector to be able to do that, right? So it's the service through AI, but it's also the fulfillment of the service through AI. So that is, in my opinion, that is the opportunity. Now, businesses, to go back to your question, should not panic. It's a new opportunity that the government has provided. It will reinvigorate the economy as well. It provides a new dimension. And, above all, Dubai has always been in the lead. It will keep Dubai in the lead.
It's about uptake, though, isn't it? Because, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. And AI is still, for most of us, I guess, it's a little bit scary. We're kind of getting used to it. We're kind of using it now. We've got used to generative AI, emails and reports and data summarization, right? Data summaries. Summarization is a new word that should exist. Agentic AI is a different beast. That's the next stage. So you've got to define the shift from assistive AI to agentic AI, how it's going to transform things. It could break some companies as well if they're relying on legacy data systems. There's a catch-up period, and I think what I'm saying is 2 years that's pretty impressive. That's some initiative taken there.
It is. Look, the way I think about it is it's a journey. Now, if you look at what has been happening, not only in the world of AI, in the world of, let's take technology evolution and then zoom in on AI, okay? So you notice something, that technology has been evolving at an accelerated path over the last decade, and that path will continue to accelerate, okay? There were some defining moments, which I call, for example, the iPad, iPhone moment, right? Because it has changed the way we deal with technology. But if you take that and unpack it, what has it done? What it has done was democratize the use of advanced technologies, because now each person at home, regardless of their age, regardless of their abilities, are able to use this technology to either enjoy themselves, play games, or to go about their business, right? And then what happened, because this technology was democratized and consumerized in a way, and I know I'm coming up with words which probably are coined words that...
Democratize is a word.
I know.
My summarization
Consumerize.
word is a little bit different, but there you are.
Enablement is another one of those words which I struggle with, and empowerment, I think, but
they're good.
But to go back to the point, I think what's happened is that because of the pervasive use of these technologies, what has happened is that in the business world, I as a CEO of a company today, because I use my iPhone and iPad and all of that at home, I want to have the same experience as I'm running my business, and I want my business to offer the same experience to my clients.
Sure.
Now, and that is happening at a very, very accelerated pace. Now, if you project that on AI, AI has followed a similar trajectory over the years. So AI is not a new thing, okay? I myself happen to have done some research on AI back in the mid-90s. And there are people who are older than I who have done, started working with AI earlier than that, right? And if you remember the days of, what was it called, the Jeopardy game that was played with AI, and if you remember, there were some of the early sort of impressive wow effects of AI in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, right? But what has happened was, I think less than 10 years ago, perhaps, AI has started going through the democratization process, as it were. Right. It has become available for everybody to use. And if you look at that journey and break it up, look, in my mind, we're now in the third phase, okay? It started with informational. So people started the very early implementation of AI that businesses and government departments have done was chatbots, okay?
Yeah.
So the chatbot looks into knowledge base, and essentially what it does was it pops back with information. So how do I apply for a building permit? Looks at the knowledge base and comes back and says, that's how you apply for a building permit. How do I renew my driving license? Yeah. So whether you or I or anybody else asks the question, it's probably going to come up with a similar answer based on its training and based on the knowledge base. And that's very informational. But it has quickly jumped to what the standard now refers to as a generative AI, which I call interactive AI in many ways, right? Interactive AI, it becomes more personalized. And I think now there's acceptance, and I think people understand what that is. And as you said, they've gotten used to it, because now I can ask AI about my specific problem. I would like to apply for a building permit, but I don't understand the zoning requirements in my area. By the way, here's the map that I'm looking at. Can you tell me what the implications of that are? Can you tell me which authorities I should deal with? Can you tell me what kind of approvals do I need to go through? And for that, it doesn't only query a static knowledge base. It goes into the public domain. It looks at similar cases. It finds out, all based on its training, right? Now, we've gotten used to that. We understand that. We know that. What is agentic AI? In my view, it's transactional AI. Do the work for me. Apply for the building permit for me. But how are you going to apply? I'm going to give you the authority to apply on my behalf. You become my twin for that particular process. Okay? So I'm giving you the authority to be able to do that. But then go and execute the transaction. Inevitably, you're going to have to come back to me at certain points within that transaction. Yeah? But I'm giving you the authority to be able to do that. On the business side, on the government side, to enable that is what the government should be doing over the next couple of years to hit that 50% mark. Yeah?
Okay, so agentic AI is more disruptive than the original chatbots. An AI agent can book flights, could process invoices, can execute refunds without human oversight. And if you offer your twin permission, if you like, what does that mean for the risk profile of a company in that case? Because you're not handing over responsibility, but you are handing over responsibility. That's a fine line.
Look, so there's literacy, there's training, there are guardrails. Okay? So you're right. You're handing over responsibility. So if I'm going to hand over my responsibilities,
you are, but you're not. I mean, it's a.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand it.
If I'm going to hand over some of my responsibilities to you, I got to be able to trust that you fulfill these responsibilities without resulting in risks for me.
Yeah.
Okay? How do I do that? That is the question. So I do that through making sure that I understand what exactly and that's it's an art and science. Okay? That I understand what exactly I'm asking you to do. I tell you what the limitations are, okay? And then I train you, and for a certain period of time, I observe and audit what you're doing. And then for any agentic process, there has to be, in my opinion, a human in the loop by design, okay? Yeah. So before I accept what you've told me, before I accept the final output of your assistance, then I actually need to look at it and review what you've told me. Yeah? Okay. Now, but that evolves over time. So in the initial phases, I probably have to go and review in detail everything that you've told me. But as I continue to train you and as this continues to evolve, I'll end up trusting you more. So I'll end up delegating more to you. It's a balance. And again, think of AI as, in my view, it's very much like a living organism, right? It's like another member of your household. I mean, think of it as a new person coming and living with you, right? So you have to interact with it. You have to continue to nurture it. You have to, and if you want to get to a point where you really trust it, you have to make sure that it trusts you. So you give it the right training, the right information. Because, I mean, the old saying says garbage in, garbage out. If you get something, train it using some irrelevant data and all of that. And, yeah.
So we're going to have to get used to this, aren't we? We're going to have to get used to our AI twin, as you term it, and it's a responsibility that's incumbent on us all to train our twin, just as our twin is expected to be doing the things that maybe we don't want to do. I just want to put my feet up. I don't want to have to go and book the flight. I'm just like, Tim 2, go and do that. That's how it's going to end up being.
Exactly, but then it's a new capability. But the idea is not that you end up delegating tasks to your AI twin so that you end up doing nothing. And I think that's going back to businesses, and I think that's a key point, all right? So it's a capability. It's a new capability.
Yeah.
It should free you up to do something else. So as a business, if you implement AI use cases throughout your business. I mean, a lot of businesses, and the first thing they think about is, which is correct, okay, no, which is correct, is essentially how can we use AI to save cost, okay? So there are many processes in the background today, a lot of back office processes today that we can use AI agents to do, which will result in us freeing up people capacity. And if we want to save cost, we can, ask those people to leave the organization and save cost. But that's one way of looking at it. And that will achieve one specific purpose if that's what you're focusing on at a specific point in time. However, it's also a new capability. You can use these people to try and start a new product line or a new service line. Let me give you an example, just to make this a little bit more concrete and more relevant. Think about an IT department, okay? Think about using AI agents to do the IT service management processes. So, for example, configuring laptops for the employees, supporting laptops for the employees, the help desk stuff, all that, yeah? Okay. So you use agents, you free up IT capacity. If you look at today's economy, in today's market, there is a surge in demand for cybersecurity and resilience services, okay? Research tells us that, our clients are telling us that, our observations from the market reflect that. Yeah. So the question becomes, if I'm a company operating in the services business, okay, if I don't provide these types of services, there's an opportunity for me to take my IT staff and rather than make them redundant, reskill them, retrain them, and use them to offer that service. Or if I do provide this service, there's an opportunity to increase my capacity so that I can service more clients. All right. So those are some of the practical examples of how businesses can look at agentic AI. It's an opportunity. There's no need to panic. It's a new capability that you're bringing in. You have to train it, deal with it, treat it like a new employee that you're bringing in, or a new set of employees that you're bringing in. Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, so let's quickly. We've got a little bit more time, and we'll run slightly over. It's just the course of the day today. I wanted to talk about the customer, the interface. What you look closely at how brands engage with users in the GCC, across the GCC. So if an autonomous agent is handling a premium customer, say in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, and a problem comes up, but quite a complex problem arises, there isn't any room for error. You've got to get it right. Right. So how do you design an autonomous system that keeps empathy and cultural nuance and brand loyalty without having to have a human there to micromanage?
I think the answer is in your question, all right? It's without having a human to micromanage, but you have to have a human in the loop for edge cases. Okay, so the autonomous systems, think about the old 80-20 rule, if you will, right? So if you take any customer interaction process, let's use an example from an industry. Let's take fintech, for example. Okay, you're opening up a bank account, and the whole process is handled by AI agents. They do the compliance check, they do the KYC, they validate who you are, they get your documents, and then they eventually pop up with a green check says cleared. Here you go. That's your account number. Now you can access the account. Or they can flag certain risks, if you will, and say based on your profile there are certain issues. Now, if you don't have a human in the loop, then you will lose a client. And we're seeing this with many fintechs. Then you will actually lose a client. So what you need to do is for certain edge cases, which may end up being, I guess, if we use the 80-20 rule, 20% of the cases, you will inevitably need a human in the loop. Now, you could argue and say, why wouldn't the human in the loop have an AI twin that is trained to deal with edge cases? Yeah, okay. But then you'll have another human in the loop design. So it's a cycle. It's very interesting as you look into this and you unpack it. And the thing about AI, the cost of the initial investment to create your initial AI and deploy it and do the training and do your data stuff and look at the risk profile and all of that, it's going to cost you a bit of money, right? But then to replicate that, if you look add a process to replicate that and to start creating other agents into other, the costs will become less and less. It'll become more efficient for you to do that. Yeah. And then the edge cases will become different. And then you'll find that the focus of the human in the loop will slightly change and will become a little bit different, right? Now, you mentioned a very important concept when you said more empathy. I think that's the focus. That today, I mean, so in my company today, we're working with a lot of partners, a lot of AI startups who are focused on creating AI with empathy. Okay? One of the other industries that we're looking at is healthcare. Okay? Because you want to do, for example, you want to use an AI agent to do post-surgery checkups, all right? You want to be able to do that rather than have the nurse, because you want to free up the nurse to do something else rather than have the nurse call the patient post-surgery and do that.
Sure.
But how you can do that with empathy, okay? How can you be non-intrusive? How can you give the space for the patient to really talk about what's important for them, whilst at the same time you capture what the checklists wants you to capture, the important indicators that you can go back to the doctor with, okay? So today, there's a lot of work that is happening around creating AI agents that are also empathetic. But in my opinion, it will not eliminate a basic principle that is a human in the loop by design. The function of the human in the loop by design will evolve.
Right. I mean, it's hard to find today's society people with empathy. So perhaps AI can do it better
You're solving
in some
for that,
cases.
yeah.
But it's really the crux of AI, isn't it? Cracking that so that we can relate.
Yeah.
That's a barrier we need to break. One more question for you. I've got a few here. What am I going to choose? Here you go. What specific skill sets do regional teams, do organizations, businesses, companies in this region, in this country now, lack at the moment so that we can safely deploy and audit agentic AI tools? What are we going to need to really understand when this is every day?
Okay, the first thing is the organizations need to understand that this is not another department. Don't create an AI department that deals with AI, all right? AI, again, going back to the twin concept, there's a literacy thing, and I think the first thing that organizations need to do is to make sure that across the organization, everyone understands what AI is, and everyone tries to use AI to improve their productivity to start with, okay? Right. Everyone, CEO downwards, everyone. I program my own AI agents to support me with specific tasks. I actually sit behind my laptop and then program those agents. And I've instructed everyone in my organization to try and do the same thing, right? Okay. So literacy is the first thing. Then the second thing is you got to look inwards about, okay, what am I going to use AI for? What are these people using AI for? Okay, now they know what AI is, they understand what AI is, they fiddled around with it a little bit. There are some successes, there are some failures, but what do I have this new capability, okay? And then you look at that and say, okay, maybe a bit of cost cutting, okay, maybe, depends on the economy, depends on where you are as an organization. Maybe a bit of diversification in terms of the products and the services, the experience that I offer and all of that stuff. Do I have the infrastructure in place? What is the infrastructure? It's data, primarily. Okay, do I have my right? So what do I need to do about my data? What sort of data do I have? What do I need to do about my data in order to be able to make the best use out of AI? And then the third thing is, look, I did an experiment a while ago, and I think we had an AI with an avatar prepared for a client, and then I went into conversation with that AI, and I started asking it irrelevant things, okay? Nothing that at all that was related to the purpose for which that AI was created, right? And then it started giving me random answers and started giving me, certain answers which were not either politically correct or appropriate or whatever it is, or professional or whatever it is. So what are the guardrails that should be implemented to ensure, going back to the enterprise grade, how do you harden your AI agents in such a way that you minimize risks to your business, ultimately eliminate risks to your business? So you got to look at literacy, you got to look at data and infrastructure. And then you got to look at how you're going to deal with this capability in order to ensure that you get what you want out of it, but you also minimize the risks for your business. All of that in the context of what do I want to do with new capability? What is my focus? What is my priority? Do I want to do cost cutting? Do I want to diversify? Do I want to, yeah?
And we are setting the standards, the boundaries, aren't we here? That's kind of the message.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've peeled back some of the layers of the onion today,
Yeah,
in a way.
absolutely.
Munir Hijazi is the CEO for the GCC at Teleperformance, global digital business services company. It's been great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Good to
Thank
have
you,
you
Tim.
here. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe for more interviews like this from Mira Business FM.
Mira Business FM, where business comes to talk. Mira Business FM, Dubai's home of business radio.
This is the fine print from Mira Business FM, our weekly legal consultation. So this time, can you really walk out of a job in the UAE without serving notice? And after you leave, can your old employer stop you from working somewhere else? What do employees and employers need to know right now when it comes to resignations and labour rights and non-compete clauses as more professionals rethink career moves in the UAE? Raymond Kiswani is a partner at Davidson & Co. Back in the room. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
Good to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we are seeing, I think it's fair to say, Raymond, a surge in career shifts across the Emirates. Population growth, that's naturally going to be the case. Are people moving faster than the law can keep up with, or are we seeing a kind of a lack of basic, maybe legal literacy when it comes to leaving a job?
I think it's probably the latter.
Yep.
It's certainly true that there is more. I mean, it's kind of a double thing. I think just generally around this sort of time, it's the lead up to summer, so it's kind of a perfect time for a lot of people to be either moving to the region or are transitioning to different jobs, etc. And I think that there's certainly more inquiries. I mean, anecdotally from our firm, where it's a lot more professionals, sort of more in terms of finance, tech, etc., that are kind of that mid-career, executive career level in that sort of strata that are trying to move. So there is definitely a larger quantity that is moving, but I think that there is a significant gap between what people perceive is their ability to leave without notice versus what the law actually requires. That gap is hopefully what we can try to fill.
Yeah, we'll try and bridge it.
Exactly.
We'll do something to the gap anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right, let's say things get toxic, or maybe a new start date is urgent. Okay, can an employee just resign with immediate effect? Can you just tell, the classic "I quit"? Under current UAE labour law, is walking out ever a legally safe option?
Yeah, so it's quite a nuanced answer there. So, I mean, the key area that we need to be looking at is Article 45 of the Labour Law,
Okay.
and that is the kind of the there's really 4 specific situations where an employee has the legal right to resign immediately, be able to leave, and keep every dirham of their entitlements, especially end of service entitlements.
Okay.
And those 4 would be effectively where the employer has breached contractual or legal rights. So, for example, non-payment of salary.
Right.
But this is crucially, even if that does happen, that doesn't mean that you have the legal right to instantly leave. The law requires that you first notify the Ministry of Human Resources, Moher, and then the employer effectively has 14 working days to correct the problem once they're notified by the ministry.
Right.
If they ignore that notice period, and they fail to fix the breach, then you are free to leave.
Right.
So there's the second scenario that allows for not giving notice is where there is workplace assault or harassment, and that is, if your employer or a representative of the employer physically assaults or harasses you, you can leave immediately once that happens. However, again, you have to report that incident immediately to the ministry.
That would need to be witnessed in
Yeah.
what way?
Yeah. So I mean, again, you would have, like, if that occurs, you'd have to effectively, you can leave there and then you'd have to report it right away.
Right.
Evidence becomes really crucial if this is happening. The third is if there's a serious kind of uncorrected danger to health and safety of the employee, and the employer has been informed and has done nothing about it. then there is a right to be able to leave without notice. And the final one of those situations is if the employer unilaterally gives you, if they unilaterally change your job description without any consent. So, but it has to be a fundamental change. Then you can be, that would be treated as a breach of your employment agreement. So again, you'd have to file that complaint to the ministry. If it's ignored, then you can leave. Outside of those 4 situations, resigning without notice, without the notice that is in your employment contract, which is typically anywhere between 30 days to 90 days, means that you are you're probably not going to be entitled to your end of service entitlements, and you might face a claim by your employer. So, again, it's really very serious situations that would permit you to leave without providing notice in the normal sense.
Sure, and those are very specific, as you've outlined. So what are the financial penalties if you fail to serve a contractually agreed notice period, or what are the ramifications?
I mean, number one, you can kiss your end of service entitlements goodbye.
Right.
Obviously, what you would have been entitled to in terms of your notice period payment, you can also leave that again.
Yeah.
I mean, you would be legally liable, effectively, for financial compensating your employer for the remaining notice days. So let's say that your notice period was 30 days and you've left kind of immediately, you would effectively have to be paying your employer. So it's a little bit of a...
So what do you pay? You pay your salary back, or
your notice period, effectively, that you failed to work, because effectively your employer has would have had an employee for 30 to 90 days, and now they don't because you've walked out without providing them with written notice. Apart from those very specific, serious, documented situations.
Those 4 points. Okay. So pretty serious mistake to make if you just walk out with no... Okay. Most contracts would specify a notice period, maybe 30, 60, 90 days, whatever the particular job is. If you leave early, what is the compensation in lieu of notice you might owe the employer? And that, I guess, can be deducted directly from final settlement.
If you've left without notice...
If you leave early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've left and you've just walked out, then it falls into the situation that we discussed.
Falls into the same,
But it's really important to know that the employee and the employer can reach a mutual agreement. So, for example, an employee can say, let's say that within their contract they have a 60-day notice period.
Right.
They can give their employer that say, I'm giving you my notice. But if, let's say that there's a job awaiting this employee that they'd like to go to, and say, listen, I'm willing to forego my 60 days salary in lieu of you letting me leave early, for example.
Sure. Well, that's what I mean. If you have you've been asked to join in 30 days, but you've got a 60-day notice period, for example. I should have outlined that, but that situation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can the key is to not make a unilateral decision, right? So if the employee and the employer can reach a mutual agreement in terms of either, it can't be the other way around. It can be the employer saying, okay, you've given me your 60 days notice. I'm going to pay you that 60 days. I don't want you showing up, right? If there's a mutual agreement.
I thought you actually meant I don't want you showing up then. I was a bit, nervous.
And the other way can also be also addressed where, they come up with, say, whatever the mutual agreement can be, that's absolutely a fine situation. It's where one party just decides what they want to do.
Sure.
That becomes the issue.
Okay. There's always some confusion regarding probation periods. So if someone wants to leave during their first 6 months, whatever the probation period is, to join another firm, what are the notice requirements if they want to avoid, any ramifications? I don't know if the labor bans are still a thing. I'm not sure, but anything around that.
I mean, the only thing that a probation period does is it reduces the notice period for both the employer and the employee. So in all circumstances, whether you are in a probation period or whether you are out of the probation period, you've kind of passed that period.
Yep.
And the probation period could be anywhere from sort of you can have no probation period at all. You can have a 3-month one, but it can't be any more than that. Right, but the only thing that it changes is the notice period. So typically, it would get reduced to a shorter time period. But there's always that written notice that has to be given.
Right. Okay.
That's really the only thing that a probation period does.
Okay. Yeah. Can an employer waive a notice period and ask an employee to leave immediately?
Yeah, exactly. So typically you would find that within the employment agreement. So say, for example, the employee has a 3-month notice period in their contract. The employer can effectively pay them in lieu. Say, rather than you coming to work here, but the employer still has to pay them that amount.
Right.
But to effectively say, we don't need you to actually continue working.
Okay. What about if an employer says, you're not leaving. I'm not accepting your resignation. I need you. You're fantastic, Tim, and we wish you'd work here forever. And here's a huge salary bump.
Is this more of a daydream that you've got going on?
It was a subliminal message to the boss. Could somebody say you can't leave?
Yeah, no. Legally speaking, no. An employer cannot simply refuse to accept a valid resignation. Once an employee has given proper written notice in line with their contract, the resignation process is effectively set in motion. So the notice period, which is anywhere sort of from 30 days to 90 days, is effectively set up so the employer has time to transition. Where the complications arise is if the employer tries to classify a resignation as abandonment of post, effectively. It's effectively where there are disputes about the notice compliance, right? So there's been cases where employees, for example, stop showing up to work during their notice period, and employers technically can file an absconding case against the employee for that, because during your notice period, you were still very much an employee of the company. Yeah. So the employer cannot say, I'm not accepting your resignation. There's no such thing as sort of a unilateral entrapment that they have to accept it. It's either side can give that notice and effectively sets it in motion, so long as it is given in the proper way under your contract and the labor law.
Okay. And are you no longer an employee, officially no longer an employee, once your labor contract is cancelled, visa is cancelled? Is there a...
once you have given your written notice of resignation, that sets it in motion. So if your notice period under your contract is, say, 30 days, and again, in terms of evidence preservation, I would not do your resignation verbally or through a WhatsApp or whatever it is. Document it properly as to the date and say, effective as of X, which is 30 days from now or 60 days, whatever it is that your notice period is. But that's your last working day. So effectively on that day, you are no longer an employee.
Okay, so I guess in effect, however you received your contract is the way in which you should end your contract. So if you received your contract by email, for example, an email to end it is, if it was soft copy,
Yeah, I mean,
hard copy, then it should be hard copy.
well, I mean, I would always sort of do it in a well-documented way, preferably through an email, and you saving that email so that you have documented evidence, which is that it went from you to the proper employer. It's dated, so that is a very clear evidence that you have given proper notice on this date, and it has ended.
Okay, and if you do that by email, sorry, there are lots of things in my head here. I'm wondering. We've all got our own email addresses. If you work for an organisation, you should retire. You should resign, maybe retire, via your company email address rather than a personal email address.
Yes, you should do that. However, bear in mind that sometimes you will no longer be able to access your work email.
Yeah, sure.
Certainly after you've stopped working there, you won't be able to access it. So it's really important to copy your personal email, so that way you get a copy of that, so you have that saved for your own records.
That's a good tip. Okay, no, I'm with you. I want to go back to the violations there: contractual breach, assault, serious health and safety, a fundamental change in your employment description contract. What kind of evidence do you need if you're claiming workplace violations? Any of those four or any others come to that? What kinds of evidence are permissible? What should you be recording?
I mean, evidence is such it's such an important thing. It's a bit like how there's that phrase in real estate, location. In any of these, it's evidence, right?
That should be a phrase in.
I really wish it were, because I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is what people perceive is happening versus what you can actually demonstrate. Because whether it's courts, whether it's the ministry, whether it's mediators, if you don't have clear, tangible evidence, the event simply didn't happen.
Yeah,
it's as clear as that, right?
Okay.
So they are very document driven, whether it's courts or whether it's the ministry. So you really want to build that paper trail before you resign, not after, right? For things like unpaid wages, having things like your bank statements, missing deposits, that's a really important one. And frankly, with the wage protection system, the WPS, it's very, very clear that would be evidence that those payments were not made to you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
For things that are around harassment, toxic work environment, etc., it's preserving all communications, things like emails, text, screenshots of messages, etc. If there were witnesses, their names. If you reported it internally, for example, to an HR department, what response you had or any response that you had, keeping that kind of paper trail there of what was the harassment issue, what was the toxic harassment issue, keeping those there, because again, it's a very difficult one to demonstrate, because sometimes people mistake management style for harassment, and that, again, if you don't have that documentary evidence, it's going to be very difficult. And sort of lastly, I would say if there's the unsafe working condition, again, having kind of photographs or incident reports or correspondence with your employer about what the physical hazards were. So again, it's making sure that you have documentary evidence and it is clear about what you are trying to prove.
Let's say, for example, that you're in a situation where there is abusive language used, or there's something that you could record, audio record or video record. These are contentious issues. I get
very
that.
Contentious, yeah.
When is that ever permissible? Is that ever permitted that you would record a situation and use? How does that work? Is that
Any
UAE
sort
law?
of under any sort of videotaping or audio recording of somebody else without their direct consent is illegal in the UAE, and that is a criminal act.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of a no-no to sort of have your kind of
The phone in pocket recording.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
Okay.
That wouldn't work.
Yep.
However, if an incident like that has happened and you then go to your HR and you say this happened and you document it, that can be used as evidence.
Okay.
So,
if you've documented immediately.
Right.
After,
So let's say that
right.
your line manager has used abusive language, abusive tone, etc., and that was verbal, and you then write an incident report to your HR saying X and Y occurred. That is a report that you are giving to the proper channel of be it HR, be it your line manager of what's occurring.
Okay.
But to actually record the person doing it without their consent is a criminal
That's
act.
illegal. What if there was, I don't know, CCTV in common areas and something like this happened in a common area?
Yeah. So again, I mean, if it was put to, for example, your HR, and that would be able to. But again, that CCTV belongs to the employer. So internally they would have to review it and see it. But if you made that clear, for example, to the administrator, this occurred, for example, here outside, and there was a CCTV, the administrator of the court can order to see that tape.
Okay. Yeah. We're a little bit off topic there, but it was just interesting to find out, where we are. I wanted to move to the really, I think probably most contentious part of many contracts is the non-compete clause. Lots of professionals feel kind of trapped by that. You fear that you can't stay in the same industry if you leave your firm. What exactly is a non-compete clause? How enforceable are these clauses in the UAE? And what might be the specific kind of reasonableness tests that a court would look at?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion around non-competes. Very generally speaking, a non-compete clause is a contractual clause. It's a contractual provision that will aim to restrict an employee from joining a competitor or starting their own business that is similar to that of the employer, or engaging in sort of generally competing activities. The idea is to protect the employer's legitimate business interests, their confidential information, their client relationships, their trade secrets, etc. In the UAE, non-competes are governed by Article 10 of the labor law. They are enforceable, but only if they satisfy kind of a very specific, very direct conditions. The restriction must be reasonable in scope, meaning it covers the same type of work the employee is actually performing. It has to be geographically defined. It can't sort of just be to the entire world, because again, it's trying to strike a fine balance between the employer's legitimate business interest, but also the employee being able to have a job, right? So it has to be fixed. It has to be a proportionate time limit. Things like 6 to 12 months is generally viewed as reasonable time frame. But even when all of those conditions are met, courts can still decline to enforce a clause if they are not satisfied that it is genuinely necessary to protect the employer's business interest. And it's really important that the burden falls on the employer to show how the clause is reasonably scoped, reasonably defined, and protects their legitimate interests. And sort of, it's quite important as well to understand that UAE courts don't give injunctive relief, meaning they can't prevent someone from doing something. So if an employee joins a competitor, let's say, the courts won't make them leave that company. It's effectively the employee or the new company will have to give some sort of financial compensation if they're found to have violated the non-compete, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. So, I mean, it can't be a blanket ban on working.
Exactly.
Obviously, yeah.
It's again, it's a very delicate area of law because it's trying to spend a real delicate balancing act between having an employer who has a company, who has trade secrets, who has confidential information, and trying to protect that business, but also realizing that, say you're a software developer, right? You can't ban this person from ever working again as a software developer, right? So it has to be reasonable in terms of what it is trying to protect. It has to be narrow enough. And it has to be narrow enough in terms of the geography, and it has to be narrow enough in terms of the time frame.
Okay. Could you enforce a non-compete against a more junior staff member, or do you have to prove that the employee has access to trade secrets or perhaps sensitive data?
Well, it's one of those areas where it's really challenging because it is very, very case specific, and it is also very specific to the way that the contractual clause is drafted. So it really depends on what the junior is working on, or what they're doing, or what access to information they have, and how is that transferable to the new place that they're going to join.
Gotcha.
Right. So it's one of those areas where it's really, really difficult to. It literally lives in the gray zone rather than it sort of being anywhere in the black and white.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does the Ministry of Human Resources and Democratisation view non-compete clauses and claims? Is it true, and I'm quoting anecdotally, that certain salary brackets or maybe even visa categories are more or less protected from non-compete
Well,
enforcement?
again, I mean, and it's not about the protection. It's again sort of the access that the employee has to confidential information, trade secrets, the type of work that they were involved in, and the competing business that they have either set up or joined. So. Yeah, it would be difficult to enforce a non-compete on sort of a non-skilled employee, for example, versus something that is very niche, delicate, very specific, and you've learned it in the employer, and then you're sort of going off and setting up a competing business, or you've joined their direct competitor doing the exact same thing, using those secrets to sort of undercut your previous employer.
No, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, do employers still pursue legal action if a former employee joins a rival firm? Is it something that you see?
Yeah,
regularly?
you can. I mean, you certainly can do it. It's very, very case specific. It's very. It's challenging to prove for. I mean, again, the burden is on the employer trying to enforce the non-compete to show that they have drafted the non-compete in a very safe way that is protecting their legitimate business interests, their trade secrets, etc. And then showing how this employee has either set up a company that is doing exactly that, or they've joined a direct competitor, what they are doing in this new role that is in direct competition to them, and how they're using it. So how has that been violated?
Okay. More broadly, a few kind of broad questions. What should professionals be checking in their contract if you're about to accept a new job? What should you be looking for in your contract, bearing in mind what we've been discussing?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a few things that are really important to be checking. I think one is your kind of your notice period. How much is that? What your probation period length is. I think a lot of people just sort of look at the compensation and they just kind of go, okay, this is what we agreed to, and they kind of move on. But checking things like your probation period, your notice period if you decide to leave, what your non-compete is saying, because that can affect if you do decide to leave and sort of stay within the same industry. Those would be kind of the top ones that I think that you should check for sure. Yeah.
If by the same kind of token, really, if you're looking to move, but your contract has some heavy clauses in it, how should you approach the resignation conversation if you want a really clean break? What should you go in? What attitude should you have going?
I think the key things is if you're planning on resigning from your current role, before you do anything, read your contract and see what it says. Understand what your notice period is, what your non-compete is, what your confidentiality obligations are, and make sure that you understand them. And if you don't understand them, make sure that you do get proper advice about that. I think the second thing is make sure that the manner in which you are resigning is in writing. Email, whether it's HR, whether it's your direct manager, keep the acknowledgement of that email. Make sure that you save it. You have something in a written record so that it protects, so that you have shown very clearly the date that you gave the notice and when your last day is. So have those confirmed. If you agree to any mutual agreement with your employer about kind of reducing your notice period or anything like that, make sure, again, that's documented. Everything that you agree to, make sure it's documented. If you have any reason to believe that you can resign immediately under those grounds that we talked about, make sure that you understand completely what is happening, preferably get some legal advice, and make sure that the procedural requirements, the ministry requirements are followed.
Yeah.
And I think also kind of before you accept the new role, make sure that you've read the contract carefully, you've understood it, you've checked your old non-compete and your new one. If there's no overlap there, flag any issues, and that's really what I would say. And I think kind of most importantly throughout the entire process is to preserve your data, your evidence for both the current employer and the new employer, so that you have everything kind of there.
Something that's just come to mind, actually. What should, we've been talking very much about employees, I suppose. What should your new employer be asking to see before you sign? What should you expect? Because is there potentially a risk of being sued if you're the new employer for inducement to breach of contract, for example?
Yeah, as an employer, I think one very key thing that you should check with the person that you are hiring, and you often sort of see it in questionnaires, is are you bound by any non-competes? You want to make sure that you're getting this employee free and clear, because again, you could easily find that this new employee has a case filed against them by their old employer because they're bound by a non-compete or a non-solicitation, etc. So that is a very, very key thing to make sure that you are getting when you offer the new role.
Well, exactly. And particularly if you're saying, look, we need you quickly. Can you work out a notice? Work out your notice in different ways. There are lots of ramifications from that, I suppose, as well.
Exactly.
Final question, just practical advice, really. As you say, we're coming into summer. It's a time when people make their moves, they make changes. Any advice for anybody planning a resignation at the moment?
Yeah, it's a bit like what we talked about. Making sure that you completely understand what your obligations are to your current employer, in terms of your notice period, your non-competes, what your obligations are during that notice period. Make sure that it's in writing what you say. if there is any shortening or changes to what is in the contract that you and the employer agree to, that you put it in writing, that it's completely understood by both sides, and that you make sure that you are in line with your non-compete with your current employer and your new employer. If there's any need to get any waivers, that you get those in writing, always in writing.
Always in writing. That's the mantra.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Evidence.
Exactly right. Raymond Kaswani is a partner at Davidson & Co. And that is The Fine Print. Appreciate you. Good to have you here. Thank you. Catch up with previous editions of The Fine Print at our website. That's mirabusiness.fm. And also wherever you get your podcasts from.
Mira Business FM.